It is so good to be back here. It's so good to see so many familiar faces and also so many new faces. It's been a long time since I've stood behind this pulpit. This is my favorite pulpit of all, by the way, because when I used to stand here in 1996 and 7 and 98, and I was new and I was so shy and nervous and anxious, my knees would be knocking the entire time, and you couldn't see it. I love this. It's so nice to see the changes that you've made in the building back here to make it more accessible and more usable, which is wonderful. And I'm also grateful to see the sanctuary more or less as it was. What a good compromise. And I hear many good things from Ellen and have been blessed with her friendship over these many years. And so she tells me how fantastic you are and how fortunate and just blessed she is to still be part of this community, which is so wonderful. I haven't stood in this pulpit, as I said, for a long time. I was ordained here in 2000. So it's, I think, been close to 26 years since I've seen some of you. I know that during my first couple of years with you, I preached at least one sermon about horses. I think it was about how difficult it is to listen to other people when we're in conflict or afraid or anxious. I still have that in a pile of boxes somewhere, I'm sure. I'm going to talk with you again about horses. I promise I don't do this every time I preach. I'm going to do it in a little bit different way today and tell you a little bit about my current ministry, which, as you heard, is different from what I launched to do. I want to tell you a little bit about the work that I do with horses and with children and with healing. Before I get started, did anyone by chance watch the Preakness yesterday? I did not. I meant to, but I didn't. Did anyone watch the Kentucky Derby 2 weeks ago? A couple? Yeah. I heard that was a pretty exciting race. What I love about those races is the excitement that each of them lasts only for a couple of minutes, but that those minutes carry years of preparation and pressure and discipline and hope. What we usually see when we watch races like that is strength and speed, acceleration, competition, and for one horse, victory. A horse breaking forward at exactly the right moment to cross the line ahead of the others. It occurs to me that horses often appear that way, fast and strong, in our cultural imagination. In art, in scripture, in poetry, in stories of conquest, horses are often symbols of strength. They are majestic and fearless creatures carrying warriors into battle. They become extensions of human courage and dominance and power. And there is truth in that symbolism, of course. Horses have always been woven deeply into human history. But what I experience day after day is something far more nuanced. The horses that I meet with and work with every day, and other horses like them at therapeutic programs or stables or riding lessons, are rarely perfect creatures from paintings or myths. The horses I work are not abstractions of great power. They are sensitive beings. They are attuned. They are sometimes actually much more fragile than you would imagine them to be. They are deeply relational. And if I'm honest, they are occasionally goofy in ways that don't fit any image of solemn majesty. They are flighty. They are nervous. They are sometimes ridiculous. They might spook at a leaf or a puddle or a sudden noise or a piece of white paper. They may want to greet everyone who walks by them with a sniff and a nuzzle. They lean into people that they trust. They test boundaries. They seek comfort. They play. And it is those qualities, their sensitivity, their need for attunement, their honesty about their fear, that make them remarkable partners for human beings who are navigating trauma, grief, anxiety, or burnout. We are, as humans, used to walking through the world, hiding our doubts, our grief, our pain from one another. That, we've learned, is what is required of us in polite society, to pretend that we are well, to stuff it all down, to cover it up, and hope that no one will notice. And at the same time, we may secretly long for people to see us. Well, a horse will never hide your tension from you. Let me say that again. A horse will never hide your tension from you. A horse will mirror it, amplify it, and invite you to notice it too. A horse will challenge you to calm yourself, to focus, to respond with patience and slowness and presence. And that is where healing can begin. Anna Sewell, in the classic work Black Beauty, wrote, "It is a great comfort to know that someone else understands, even if they cannot speak your language." And I think that is part of what horses and other animals offer us. Not words, not answers, not solutions, but curiosity and understanding and presence. And if we can see that in them, that capacity, and can respond to it in kind, there is so much that we can learn, both about them and about ourselves. As a young child learning to ride, I discovered very quickly that I could not control a 1,000-pound animal and make it do anything that I wanted to do if it did not want to do it. If I wanted the horse to do something with me, I had to learn to communicate with it. I needed to learn its own language. I needed to learn how to persuade rather than to force. And then, using that horse's language, I needed to begin to build a partnership. There was an old Taoist idea that wisdom is not about control, but about attention. It's not about forcing outcomes in our relationships, but about noticing what is already unfolding in those around us, which requires our patience and our curiosity and our attention. It's not about shaping life into something that it's not, but creating the conditions where life can find its own path forward. Horses understand something about relationship that I think we, or at least I, often forget. They don't respond to spoken instruction alone. They respond to the presence of another. They respond to breath and tension and posture. They are always in conversation with us, even when no words are spoken. When we are saying one thing with our words and something entirely different with our bodies, which we do all the time, they notice that. And what they ask of us is not perfection, but coherence. A nervous system calm enough and grounded enough and present enough for them to meet. I was thinking about that when I was reading about Sherry Duvall, who's the trainer of this year's Kentucky Derby winner, and the first female trainer to ever win that race in that race's long history. She works in a world that often rewards urgency and domination, faster development, earlier performance, relentless pressure to get results. But people describe her and her approach very differently. They say she is patient and attentive and curious and treats the horses like individuals, learning from them what she needs to know to help them grow. Which reminds me of our readings from this morning. She is known for treating horses not as interchangeable athletes on a schedule, but as distinct beings with their own thresholds and temperaments and needs. Her emphasis is on long-term soundness and responsiveness rather than forcing early speed. She trains these horses through relationship rather than through domination. And what stays with me about horse racing every time I see a great Derby win, again, is not just the finish line, but everything that goes into creating the race. Again, the training, the repetition, the quiet hours when nothing dramatic is happening, but everything is being formed. And that brings me to the work that I'm currently doing now at Lovelane, where horses are not objects or tools, but partners in our work. After a childhood with horses and many happy years in parish ministry, coming into this work as the executive director of a pediatric therapeutic horseback riding program for kids with disabilities and special needs felt almost like a dream come true for me. When I was a child, I constantly was asking my mother for a horse, and I never got one. Once, after I was an adult, she sent me a shoebox filled with all the canceled checks from my riding lessons, which I think was her gentle and loving way of saying, "Do you have any idea how much this hobby of yours has cost me?" If she had only lived long enough to see me in this current role, it might have made all of those years of horse-related expenses seem like an even better investment. Today, Mom, I own 14 horses. And a big part of my job is making sure that we raise enough money to care for them all well, because as I said, they are invaluable partners in our work. We could literally not do it without them. They are part of our staff. At Lovelane, we provide individualized therapeutic horseback riding lessons for children with physical and cognitive and emotional challenges. Lovelane began in 1989 in a backyard barn with a borrowed horse and a small handful of volunteers and one dedicated woman, the founder, Debbie Sabin, who later became an occupational therapist, who was deeply passionate about the healing power of the horse's movement, in particular, the horse's gait, and what it could offer to children living with physical disabilities. What she understood, and what decades of research now confirm, is that the horse's walking gait closely mirrors the human walking gait. When a child sits atop a horse, their body receives rhythmic sensory and neural input, which is remarkably similar to the experience of walking independently. So for children who come to us unable to walk on their own, that movement can be profoundly important for their development. It can, in fact, be life-changing. Imagine what it means for a nervous system to experience, perhaps for the first time, the rhythm and motion of balanced forward movement through space. The horse's body becomes not only transportation, but communication. Signals are sent from the brain to the body and back to the brain again. Muscles are engaged. The core strengthens, balance shifts and recalibrates. Fine and gross motor skills are practiced naturally through riding and steering and teaching and reaching and responding. But even beyond those physical benefits that Debbie recognized so early on, there is also something emotionally transformative about being carried by this powerful and responsive, sensitive animal. Children who spend much of their lives in medical settings, being examined and evaluated and assessed, suddenly experience agency and freedom and partnership in a way that they may not have before. They are not, when they are with us, patients on a therapy table or a therapy ball. They are horseback riders. And often that alone changes something deep inside of them, how they see themselves in the world. Today, Lovelane serves more than 100 students each week through private half-hour therapeutic riding lessons, along with another 50 children in unmounted programs designed to support their physical and occupational and social and cognitive and emotional needs. What began with one borrowed horse and a few volunteers has become a community of care built around the belief that healing happens best in relationship, with specially trained instructors and a handful of therapists and 200 dedicated volunteers and supportive families and caretakers, and these extraordinary, goofy animals who meet people with honesty and sensitivity and presence. Long before I worked in this field, I was a child living with a great deal of anxiety. I was that knock-kneed young adult who was up here struggling to speak to you without being so nervous. I was clumsy and fearful and overwhelmed by things that seemed easy for everyone else. I was carrying grief and what we would now probably call complex trauma rooted in a complicated family life. And yet, when I was with horses, they never judged me. They never asked me to explain myself. They did not require me to be impressive or articulate or composed. They only asked me to show up honestly with whatever trembling and hope I had, and to listen to them and through them listen to myself and make adjustments to be fully present with them. Horses did for me something not unlike what this congregation did for me when I was a student intern with those knocking knees and a lot of anxiety and self-doubt. They helped to shape me. They gave me feedback. Somehow I learned to breathe with them, to trust them, and eventually to trust myself. That early experience of connection shaped the person that I would become. It led me here to Chelmsford, and it led me into ministry, and eventually to this work that I do now, reflecting on how horses can become healers, teachers, mirrors, and companions through the landscapes of trauma and anxiety and depression. Because we live in a world, all of us, that is often so unkind to the human nervous system. Anxiety and grief are with us all the time, and they are not signs of weakness. They are understandable coping responses of bodies and minds asked to endure too much, too fast, every day. The news is relentless. Violence and climate change and political instability and personal losses, and they all weigh on us all the time. As a minister, I have walked beside many people carrying heavy burdens, some of them in this congregation years ago. Parents trying to help struggling children, caregivers stretched beyond exhaustion, people grieving losses that they cannot even always name. And again, I have witnessed something remarkable when people engage with their pets, their cats, their dogs, and now with horses. Science now confirms what many of us intuitively have known for a long time, that animal-assisted therapy, including equine-assisted therapy, can help regulate the nervous system, reduce anxiety, improve emotional awareness, and support trauma recovery. Because horses respond to our emotional cues, because they mirror tension and relaxation, because they give us that feedback, and because they offer honest feedback without judgment. What is happening biologically for us is fascinating. Interacting with horses can activate our parasympathetic nervous system, the part of us that is responsible for rest and regulation and calm. Our heart rates slow without our even asking them to. Our stress hormones decrease without us even knowing, and our bodies begin to settle into themselves. But what is happening spiritually may matter just as much. Horses teach us to inhabit our bodies again, to breathe, to notice, to become aware of the subtle language of movement and feeling. Nicholas Evans in The Horse Whisperer wrote, "The horse does not speak, but he will teach you more than words ever could." And I have seen that truth over and over again. In addition to our horseback riding lessons, we also partner with a number of other organizations and serve young children who may not have physical challenges, but who may have experienced significant disadvantages or losses or even complex trauma. One of those partnerships is with an eating disorders clinic where young women with histories of trauma spend time with horses as part of their broader therapeutic care. And what I witness when they are with us is not dramatic transformation, but something quieter and in many ways more profound. As I watch their nervous system slowly learning what it feels like to exist near another living being, a big one, without having to perform or defend or disappear. Horses meet people in a different register. As I noted earlier, they respond to breath and posture and tension and presence. And for someone whose body has learned hypervigilance or disconnection or disassociation, that kind of steady, non-judgmental responsiveness can be deeply regulating. I have watched young women stand beside a horse and gradually begin to soften, not because anyone told them to relax or that they should relax, but because they were in the presence of a being that demanded no explanation, only honesty. I've seen them drop their defenses and pay attention with curiosity both to what is happening with the horse and what is happening within themselves. And in those moments, healing happens. Marguerite Henry, who wrote Misty of Chincoteague, said, "The horse is a mirror to your soul. Sometimes you might not like what you see, sometimes you will." Horses do provide mirrors for us, honest ones, but unlike much of the world, they do not reflect back shame. They reflect back presence. And this form of healing, relationship which doesn't require correction, is just so powerful. The Taoist tradition might call it non-forcing. In therapeutic work, we call it attunement. In lived experience, it feels like a deep breath of fresh air or a cold glass of water on a hot day. If there is something that I have learned from horses and from children and from ministry and from my own life, it is that healing rarely arrives in a single dramatic moment. It arrives as a relationship that feels safe enough to stay in, and perhaps that is the invitation before all of us today, to become people who offer that kind of presence, non-judgmental, open, curious presence to one another, to listen more carefully, to practice attention, and to remember that healing does not begin with fixing, but in being fully present and in accompanying others. The horses that I have worked with have taught me that. You have taught me that. And for that, I am deeply grateful. Amen, and blessed be.